Now, some good news from Cuba. News we rarely hear because most of the news tends to be bad. But Guillermo Artiles, founder of a group called Cuba Now, says there is plenty of good news. Like what?
Lots, John. The entrepreneurial growth on the island is unbelievable. You see it in the Artiles. You see it in the
But even with the American blockade?
Even with the American blockade, the entrepreneurs, totaling about 500,000 at the moment, are being trained by other entrepreneurs on the island. This growth is real and it is spreading beyond just Havana.
Why now?
Why now? It is a decision that was made by the President of the United States to engage, to try a new policy.
But the entrepreneurship you imply was happening even before that and independent. I mean, most of the trade is with Spain and Latin America.
Yeah, but no, I think the entrepreneurial growth has been injected by a lot of the remittances coming from Cuban Americans here in the U.S., sending to their families. I think that's the first driver. And then you put on top of that the president's regulatory easements, and you have the system that's currently in place right now.
Previous guests said, this isn't a good thing. All the money goes to the military.
I disagree. Look, I think there is a tangential benefit that's going to be felt by the military, but when running a cost-benefit analysis, as I think we should always do, that benefit to the Cuban people, this is about the Cuban people, outweighs any tangential benefit to the government.
They said it all goes, the money has to go to the military, and the military just pays people a terrible salary.
True, even the travel, right? Let's just talk about removing the travel ban, right? You and I head down to Cuba, we engage with a normal taxi driver, right? We give him, let's call it $10 US. That is a significant sum of money in that individual's. Let's take Airbnb, for example.
The one of the fastest growing businesses now in Cuba is the home sharing service Airbnb.
Absolutely.
This clip here.
Airbnb gaining traction in one unlikely location, Cuba.
It makes sense. Beautiful private homes like these. Rent for as little as $40 a day, meals included. The company's CEO explained how Airbnb rushed to Cuba once the travel restrictions were lifted.
They were lifted in January. By February, we had a team on the ground, and now we have over 1,000 homes in Cuba, nearly 500 in Havana alone.
But I assume they can't keep the money.
They can't keep the money, and they are simply taxed like we are taxed everywhere else in the world. And Airbnb has done what I like to term the CCC, and I promise there's no communism in that. It's the Cuban Citizen Cycle. Airbnb provides the holistic service of me here in the US, hitting a few buttons, booking an Airbnb, flying down on an American airline, which is going to happen very soon, right? It's awaiting FAA approval. We get down there, stay in an Airbnb, walk outside, go to a restaurant, a Artiles, which is a Cuban-run restaurant, and there we are, connecting all the Cuban citizen dots.
Castro, when I was in college, said there will be no future in this nation for private businesses. And most of them are not. And there hasn't been much.
Sure, but I mean, he was wrong even before the Americans' involvement, right? As you sort of hinted at earlier, right? I mean, the Canadians and Europeans have been there forever in joint venture functions. I think an interesting question is going to be, with U.S. companies going down there, how much longer are the U.S. companies, who don't normally operate in a JV fashion, are going to allow or continue to allow the JV structure?
We know that capitalism works better than socialism, but some years ago, my former colleague, Barbara Walters, asked Fidel Castro,
does socialism work?
Yes, it does. Yes, our socialism works in our country. I know what the Chinese have done and the Vietnamese have done for their people. If they did not have socialism, they wouldn't have been able to attain the economic growth they have today.
and a lot of Americans today are eager for socialism.
So, look, his socialist vision truly has not panned out. He's partnered with various other countries over the last 60 or so years.
Got handouts from Russia, Venezuela, China, but they've been cut off now.
Right, but if his true socialist vision sort of had panned out the way I think, he had envisioned, I don't think any of those partners play a role, and they clearly have played a very significant role.
And your group, Cuba Now, does what?
We are an empowerment organization looking to empower the Cubans on the island to allow them to choose their destiny.
And technology makes that easier. So Airbnb, and now when there's a protest, the ladies in white.
An incredible empowerment for the people. A simple gesture, right? Empowering someone with a cellular device, capture that unfortunate moment, and blast it to the rest of the world. I think that forces the Cuban government's hand to address the otherwise horrific instances.
Because the regime can't control all those individual communications. I guess they could shut it down.
Or
But
control it less, right? And in my eyes, that less control, whatever degree that is progress.
So you say Obama going to Cuba, great thing. More.
Does that smile say enough?
Thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you.
Next, how the embargo is not really an assault on Castro. It's an assault on us, on our own freedom.